Welcome to the 7th installment entitled Know Thy Canvas. If you recall from the previous videos, we have been focusing on these three stages, where on the left we have the claim, and this is what you think to paint, what you imagine to paint. In the middle we have the actual execution, this is what we find in the paper, that's you painting it. And then on the right we have the result, the end result, as in what you end up painting. And the key thing we said was to have the result match the claim. That is what we're after. We want to make sure that the two are aligned with each other. And for that to happen, the action really occurs in the middle, in the execution phase, where you are painting the picture. And the point that I want to make in this video, this is for you to be aware of your canvas. That your canvas itself has a limited amount of space, and you want to be aware of those limits because that will shape how much space you can allocate to your objects and relations. Now, to illustrate this, let me go to this particular object, morally panicked upper class. Now, if you recall, here's where we got it from, this relationship saying that the rise of the working class slums caused the morally panicked upper class. Now let's assume that is the entire painting we want to create. But for now in this discussion, let's just focus on this one object. And so what we want to ask ourselves when we look at this painting and we try to bring this concept of morally panicked upper class to life, what we want to ask ourselves, where are we going to place it? Where on this canvas? So we have all of these options. We can, for instance, place it here, place it there, place it here, or here. Right? Notice where we place it on the canvas will shape how it would relate to the other parts of the painting. So we want to think about where we place it. The second is how much space we want to allocate to it. So for instance, you can imagine something like this, or even this. Now what's happening here? Well, if I allocate all of this space to morally panicked upper class, well, that's great, because now I can devote every single detail and really expand on it, develop it, and by the time I'm done, my audience is going to appreciate the point that I'm making here about the morally panicked upper class. They're going to be convinced. But what's the problem? Well, we haven't left any room for the other concepts, for the other objects and relations. Right? We've gobbled up the entire canvas with just this one object. Well, that doesn't help us to produce the painting as a whole. You may now say to yourself, I see the problem. Let me go to the other extreme. Let me give it very little space like this. Well, in that case, yes, you're right. Now you have all of the space to devote to the other concepts and develop. But the problem here is that you've devoted so little space to the idea of morally panicked upper class that your audience is essentially left with a blurry picture. Right? If you recall the distorted image from the last video. Now, there may be some instances where that is okay. That is, when you have concepts that are not central to your argument, it may be sufficient to devote just a little bit of space to them. But if the object is central, like in our case with the morally panicked upper class, if that is central to your argument, well then you cannot do with just this little bit of space. What we can then say then is when we think about objects and placing them on the canvas, there are really two decisions that we are making. The first one is, where do I place this object? Right? Where on my canvas do I place it? Because that will shape how it relates to the other objects. The second is, how much space do I allocate to it? Do I give it more or less space? And these are choices that you have to make. And for each one of them, there are these trade-offs. You have to choose for yourself, say to yourself, okay, you know what? This concept is so central to my argument that it warrants devoting more space on my canvas. And I'm willing to sacrifice other concepts for that reason. But that is your choice to make. Now, to conclude then, let me just illustrate what that would look like for you, the writer, just to show the corollary here. So on the left we have the painter, and on the right, as we said, your canvas as the writer is what? Words and pages. So here's what it would look like when we talk about placement. Right? We have the morally panicked upper class at the top left. We can sort of illustrate that with what we're seeing here on the first page. Now think about it. When you are introducing your reader to this concept, right? We may place it here, or place it here, or here. Right? If you can see now, in terms of pages, if you place it all the way at the bottom, well, that's when your reader will actually encounter that concept. Is that when you want your reader to encounter it? Or is perhaps morally panicked upper class a concept that is crucial for all the other objects and relations? That is, we need to first understand morally panicked upper class in order to understand the other objects. That again is something you have to make a decision. Okay? Now the same thing here in terms of space allocation. If we devote all of this space on the canvas, this is what it'll look like on your paper. We've essentially taken up the entire space for our paper, and we left with just one page. And in that one page, we were supposed to develop all the other objects and relations. Good luck. Now, if we shrink that a little bit, or shrink it even more, you can see in this very small space we allocate to our concept, while on the paper, it's just a little tiny bit of space. And I hope here you can start to appreciate that decision making that you are constantly making, how much space you're allocating. And as I said before, if you allocate only this much space, well, how much can you actually paint during that little bit of space? How detailed, how convincing, how much can you actually develop your idea? Not much. So here it is then. This is the point for the video. When you paint, know thy canvas. How much space you allocate and where you place your objects and relations matters. And you want to be aware of that. And we will see this really come in the next two videos. See you then.